Every Super Bowl team has these guys, the players that no one's really talking about in July, that everybody ends up talking about in December and January. Not because they became superstars, because they became indispensable. Think about Isaiah Pacheco, Tershawn Wharton. Think about Travarius Ward before anyone outside of Kansas City even knew his name. Every championship run seems to have those type of guys. The question is, who's next? Over the last couple of days, I've been digging through film, stats, roster projections, because I wanted to answer one question. Who are the players that could quietly change this football team without anybody really noticing? Not someone like Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Rashee Rice. I'm talking about the players that don't make national headlines, but end up making winning plays when the games matter most. And after going back through everything, I think I found one. But by the end of this video, I actually think another player might be even more important.
It's top secret stuff.
Let's start with the offense. One thing Brett Veach has proven over and over and over again is that he doesn't just draft athletes. He tries to draft football players. There are a lot of receivers who could run fast. There are a lot of receivers who put together highlight reels. But that's not enough to earn playing time in Andy Reid's offense. Patrick Mahomes demands trust. Andy Reid demands precision. If you don't know exactly where you're supposed to be at, you're probably not going to see the football. Which brings me to this pass catcher. When I started watching his college tape a couple of years ago, one thing kept showing up over and over again. He wasn't winning because he was the biggest receiver. He wasn't winning because he was the fastest receiver. He was winning because he consistently did the little things right. Then I looked at the production. In 2023, he had 68 catches, over 1,000 yards receiving, 15 touchdown receptions. That's not just a good season. That set Utah State's single season receiving touchdown record. Then in 2024, he missed some time with a foot injury. He came back from that and still put up over 800 yards receiving. Now those numbers are impressive, but I honestly think the film is even better than the stat sheet, because what stands out isn't one elite trait. It's how complete he already looks. Watch how he gets into his routes. There's very little wasted movement. He's efficient. Everything looks controlled. Corners aren't losing because he simply outruns them. They're losing because he already created separation before the football was ever thrown. That's something that translates to the NFL. That's something we need in Kansas City. Then watch him track the football. He's comfortable locating the football over either shoulder. He adjusts naturally. He attacks the football with his hands instead of letting it get into his body. Again, those are things that translate. Then, after the catch, he becomes a totally different animal. He's competitive. He finishes runs. He's constantly looking for extra yards instead of looking for a sideline. When you put all those things together, you start understanding why Kansas City really liked him. Not because he's supposed to become the next Tyreek Hill like every other receiver that came after Tyreek Hill. It's because he already possesses several traits that fit exactly what Andy Reid asked from his receivers. Now here's where I think the conversation starts to get interesting, because somebody's already typing, Steve, where exactly is he supposed to play? That's a fair question. You've got Rashee Rice. You've got Xavier Worthy. You've got Tyquan Thornton. They just drafted Cyrus Allen. There's talent in that room. But here's the mistake that people are making. They think a receiver room is built around 3 players, 4 players. It isn't. 17 games is a long season. People get hurt. Packages change. Young players develop. Roles evolve. Every season, somebody earns snaps that nobody predicted in July. And here's the question that I've been asking myself. If Jalen Royals continues doing the exact same things that made him successful in college, precise routes, reliable hands, strong ball tracking, competitive after the catch, could Patrick Mahomes eventually become one of the quarterbacks that really trust him? Because history tells us that's what really determines who plays in Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw the football based on draft position. He throws it to players that he knows is going to be where they should be. He throws it to players that consistently make the right decisions. He throws it to players that he actually trusts. And that's why I think Royals has a legitimate opportunity. Not because I think he's going to become a freaking superstar, not because I think he's catching over 80 passes or anything crazy, but because his strengths already match the kind of receiver that Kansas City has valued for years. Real quick, if you're enjoying this breakdown and appreciate the research that goes into these videos, do us a huge favor and hit that like button for me. Let's see if Chiefs Kingdom can get this one to 600 likes. Also, hit that hype button while you're at it. Let's get that to over 25,000 today. Every like and hype helps these videos reach more Chiefs fans, and we really appreciate all of you that do it. Now, back to the show. I thought that was going to be the story. I really did. I thought after studying Royals that I'd found my answer. The under-the-radar player Chiefs fans should be watching this summer. But then when I went back and watched another player, somebody who actually spent time on the field last season, somebody whose stat line doesn't look all that impressive, which is exactly why almost nobody's talking about him enough. And honestly, by the time I finished watching him, I think he might have a bigger chance at being that impact player for the football team than even Jalen Royals. Now, before I tell you exactly who I'm talking about, let me ask you something. When was the last time a rookie edge rusher came into the NFL and completely dominated from day one? It happens, sure, but it's pretty rare. Most of the best pass rushers in football made their biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. Why? Because they're no longer just trying to survive, they're learning how to win. And I think that's exactly where Ashton Gillotte is right now. When Chiefs fans think about Gillotte's rookie season, most people probably remember one thing. Well, not much. There wasn't a huge breakout or anything like that. There weren't double-digit sacks. There weren't highlight reels every Sunday. And because of that, I think a lot of people have quietly moved on in their heads from him. But here's what I found interesting when I started digging into this season. The coaching staff, they're really putting a lot into him. He played in all 17 games last year as a rookie. Think about that for a second. Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid don't really hand out defensive snaps just because you're a rookie draft pick. If you're on the field, it's because you've at least earned some kind of trust from them. Gillotte finished the year with 38 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, a pass defended, an interception, and 1.5 sacks. Now, if you're only looking at sacks, you're probably thinking, that's not very impressive. And honestly, I would agree with you. But sacks shouldn't be the only thing you're measuring. Football's rarely that simple. One thing I always try to remind myself when evaluating defensive linemen is this. Pressure comes before sacks. A player who consistently affects the quarterback usually ends up with more sacks over time. A player who never gets close, well, they don't. Gillotte flashed the ability to create pressure. Not consistently enough yet, but often enough that you could see why the Chiefs believe there's more in there. And when I watched him, something kept standing out to me. His effort never changed. Whether it was the first quarter or the fourth quarter, whether the play came to him or away from him, he chased everything. Every snap looked super important to him.
Shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring today's episode. Today we're making an entry on some MLB games. We're going to take Tommy Edman, 4-hitter fantasy score. We're going to go more on this one. We're also going to take Zach Wheeler of the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Dodgers, 4.5 strikeouts. We're going to go more on that one. Then we're going to take Kansas City outfielder Lane Thomas versus the Giants, 5-hitter fantasy score. We're going more. Let's go ahead and lock that in. Remember, Prize Picks is America's #1 sports pick app. You can follow along with us all season at All Chiefed Up, tell our picks. And right now there's a new user offer. Play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups. If you win, just use code HMA when you sign up. You can find the link in the description.
You hear coaches talk all the time about having a high motor. Sometimes that becomes such a cliche that it almost loses any meaning. But when you watch Gillotte, that's exactly what you see. High motor. He doesn't quit on plays. And honestly, that's one of the hardest traits to teach. Now let's go back to what made him successful in Louisville, because I think this is where people misunderstood what kind of player he actually is. Gillotte was never viewed as some unbelievable athletic freak. He wasn't winning because he ran a 4.4. He won because he understood leverage, because his hands were active, because he played with excellent effort, because he came into every snap with a plan. Those traits helped him become one of the most productive pass rushers in college football. The NFL, it's a little different. The tackles are bigger, they're stronger, they're more technically sound and experienced. The moves that worked every Saturday don't exactly work on every Sunday, which is exactly why year 2 becomes so freaking important. And before we talk about what that year 2 jump could actually look like, if you're enjoying this type of Chiefs content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100,000 subscribers, and we're getting closer every single day because of you guys. If you love detailed Chiefs coverage, film breakdowns, live streams, and everything in between, we'd love to have you join us all chiefed up. Now, here's where I think Gillotte could really take a step forward. For me, it starts with finishing. There were snaps last season where he'd win early, only for the quarterback to get the ball out just before he arrived. Those almost don't really show up in the stat sheet, but coaches notice them. Now the challenge becomes turning those pressures into sacks, turning disruption into drive-ending plays. The second thing, functional strength. Every young edge rusher has to learn how to consistently set the edge against NFL offensive tackles. College tackles don't look like Trent Williams or Penei Sewell or Lane Johnson. Every week in the NFL is a different level of power and technique. Another full offseason in an NFL strength program should help him anchor better against the run and hold up when teams directly run at him. And finally, experience. This is one people look over all the time. Steve Spagnuolo's defenses ask a lot of defensive linemen. It's not just go get the quarterback. You're reading formations. You're communicating with linebackers. You're timing stunts. You're disguising pressures. You're reacting to motion. That's a lot for a rookie. By year 2, the game usually starts to slow down a little bit, so players stop thinking so much and they start reacting. And that's when talent finally catches up with confidence. And I think that's where Gillotte has a chance to surprise people this year. But here's the thing that I find really interesting. Neither one of these stories is actually about Jalen Royals, and they're not really about Ashton Gillotte either. They're about something much bigger than that. They're about how a fallen championship team can get back to being a championship team. Everybody talks about Patrick Mahomes. Everybody talks about Chris Jones. Everybody talks about Travis Kelce and Andy Reid. And they should. Those are the stars. But dynasties aren't sustained because the stars stay great forever. They're sustained because new contributors keep emerging behind them. One year, it's a random guy like Damian Williams. Another year, it's a guy like Jalen Watson. Another, it's somebody nobody even saw coming. The Chiefs have built one of the deepest organizations in football because they continue finding players who embrace their role and maximize it. So when training camp starts, don't just watch Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. Watch who he's starting to trust. And don't just watch who's getting sacks. Watch who keeps showing up around the quarterback all the time. Because sometimes the biggest story of training camp isn't the headline everyone's expecting. It's the player nobody expected to become part of the story in the first place. And I honestly believe Jalen Royals and Ashton Gillotte have a chance to become 2 of those stories this season. Maybe neither one becomes a Pro Bowler. Maybe neither one makes national headlines. But if Royals earns Mahomes' trust and Gillotte earns more snaps in Spagnuolo's rotation, the Chiefs become a deeper football team, a more complete football team. And when you're chasing another Super Bowl, sometimes that's exactly the difference between coming up one game short and raising another Lombardi trophy. Now, if you've been wondering about another position group that could have just as much impact on whether the Chiefs make another Super Bowl run, you're going to want to watch this video right here, because I think it might completely change how you look at this football team. We'll see you over there.